so you guys will just have to go back one, so that the deputy.
Okay.
You want this? No, that's fine. You cool?
Hey Chris,
Yes,
making sure you can hear me
I can.
if I need to be heard. Thank you.
Thanks. Judge terminals will be down in 2-3 minutes.
Rise, please.
Thank you, please be seated.
Before we start, I want to talk to the audience here shortly. We can't have any outbursts in the courtroom, so if there's any of that, it will be moved immediately. So please try and contain yourself. I know this is going to be highly emotional. It could be anyway. And so I want to caution the crowd on that. And we're ready to go. Who's prosecution?
It's both of us, Your Honor, so we'll be splitting up the witnesses.
Okay.
Ms. Curtis will be.
For the
doing
record,
first.
if you just state your appearances.
Monica Janeski.
And Angela Curtis.
Thank you. Mr. Hunting.
Good morning, Your Honor. Mark Hunting on behalf of Mr. Garcia. Obviously, there are a lot of people here in the courtroom today. The prosecutor has provided me with a list of 12 witnesses that they intend to call here today. I don't know whether any of those witnesses are here in the courtroom. If they are, I would ask that the witnesses be sequestered until after their testimony is completed. Similarly, Your Honor, I'd make this request. I'd like Mr. Garcia's hands free so that he can take notes and assist me in cross-examination if necessary. I spoke to the deputies, and they said they don't have a problem with it, but I would need to make that request of you. Or at least one hand. He's right-handed.
I'm getting conflicting information on that, then, because my understanding was deputies were not comfortable.
Oh, well, did I misunderstand that? I thought it was if the
I
judge.
said if the judge is okay with it, we're okay with it.
Okay.
It's totally up to you, Judge.
Okay, well, yeah, it is, but, I've seen many defendants take notes and be able to assist without having.
Well, we can try it the way it is. If it seems to be a problem or he can't write quick enough, then I'll address it at a later
Sounds
time.
good, that's
Okay.
perfect.
With that, we're ready to proceed.
All right, if you'll call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor, the people called Devin Doolittle, and at this time I'd ask the other witnesses to step out. I believe they have. Yeah. We're gonna sit in a chair. Oh, sure.
All right, young man, what's your name?
I'm Devin Doolittle.
Can you spell it?
Devyn. Doolittle.
How old are you?
11.
All right. Do you wish me to inquire rather about the truth and that kind of thing, or? No objection. All right, here's what we need to do. First, I'm gonna swear you in, so you gotta tell the truth. Now, you know the difference between truth and a lie, right?
Yep.
All right, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, so help you God? Okay. Now, if I told you that the sun was shining, would that be a lie or a truth? Fair enough. Go on.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Devin. Can you tell us your date of birth or your birth date?
January 17th,
Of what year?
2010.
2010. Okay. So you're currently how old?
11.
All right. And who is your mom?
Mollie
Do you know her last name?
Schmidt.
And in August of this past year, so now it's January, so last summer, were you living with your mom at least part of the time?
Yes.
And was that in a townhouse in Plainfield Township?
Yes.
Okay. And did anyone else live with you when you would go visit her?
No.
All right. And who's your dad?
McDoodle.
All right. And so would you spend time with both your dad and your mom?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have a grandpa?
Yes.
And what's his name?
Mike.
All right. And is he your mom's dad?
Yes.
All right. And
Can we get a last name?
O'Mara.
O'Mara. Yep. Omeara for the record. And back in the summer, this past summer, did you and your mom move into this new place, this new townhouse?
Yes.
And did you have to start a new school because of that? Is that a yes?
Yeah.
And who drove you to school on that first stage to that new school?
Lee.
Lee? Okay. And who is Lee?
Lee was my mom's friend.
Okay. And if you saw Lee again, would you recognize him?
Yes.
Do you see him anywhere here today?
Yes.
All right. For the record, can you just tell us what he's wearing and maybe point to him?
Green suit.
All right. May the record reflect this witness has identified the defendant.
No objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Good shot.
Thank you. Was that the first time you'd ever met Lee?
Yes.
All right. And then did you ever see him again after that? Okay. And do you know what kind of car it was that Lee drove you to school in?
No.
Okay. Now, did you have an Apple Watch this summer? And was it kind of like mine? I have an Apple Watch on for the record. That could you receive text messages on that watch? And could you send text messages on that watch?
Yes.
What about phone calls? Could people call you on the watch?
A few people.
Okay. And had you and Lee ever text messaged each other?
I think a few times.
Okay. So that meant, did you have his number somewhere in your watch, his phone number? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. And he would have had yours then? Is that fair to say?
Objection calls for speculation.
Did he ever like respond or answer the phone when you called him on the watch?
I don't think so.
Okay. But when you text messaged with him, would he respond? Would the person respond?
I don't remember.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the last time you saw your mom, okay? Can you tell us where you were?
I was at my house.
And this would be the apartment in Plainfield Township? Okay. Was anyone else there besides you and your mom?
No.
And what were you doing at your house with your mom that night?
I got up from my room and I was going to go downstairs and watch TV around 10, and my mom was still there.
Okay. Now, would this be August of 2022, this past August?
I don't remember.
Okay. And you said you got up from your room. Can you tell us a little bit about how your room is set up in that apartment, or how it was set up?
It was a little room going down the side of bed and some toys in there.
And was the townhouse 1 story, 2 stories, 3 stories?
3 stories if you count a basement.
Okay. And your bedroom was on the top level,
Yep.
and your mom's would have been where?
In the basement.
In the basement. Okay. And what about the middle level? Is that where the TV was?
Yep.
And were there any gaming systems that you would like to play in that room?
Yes.
What was that system?
We
Okay. Now, on that date that you last saw your mom, did you go to bed? Did your mom, send you to bed that night? And do you know what time that was?
around 8:30.
And did you then go to your room up on the top level? And once you went to bed, did you stay in bed?
Not until like 10.
Okay. What did you do around 10?
I went downstairs
And why did you want to go downstairs?
to play the game.
Okay. And did you then go down to the TV?
Yes.
And at some point in time, did you hear your mom say something?
Yes.
What did she say?
She said go back to bed.
Okay. And did you go back to bed?
Yeah.
Do you remember, you said this was around 10 p.m.? And did you go back to bed, or what did you do?
I went back to bed.
Okay. Did you actually see your mom when she said that to you? Okay. Where was she?
She was in the room.
Okay. And so you went back to bed. What happened next?
I woke up.
Was it in the morning when you woke up?
Yep.
What was the first thing you did when you woke up?
Went downstairs.
And when you went downstairs, did you see your mom? Okay. And what did you do?
I sat down and watched TV.
Okay. And at some point, were you worried about your mom, or what were you thinking? Did you look for her in the apartment?
Yeah, I went downstairs and looked for her.
Was she there? What did you do then?
I just went back upstairs and watched TV.
Okay. And at some point, did you try to contact your dad or your grandpa Mike?
Yes.
And were you able to reach out to them? Do you remember why?
No.
Okay. And what's the next thing that you remember happening that morning or that day?
My grandpa showed up to pick up my little sisters.
Okay. And did you tell him what was going on? And what happened next once your grandpa appeared?
He started calling people.
Okay. And did you then go? Where did you go after that?
I went to his house.
To your grandpa Mike's house? And where did you go after that?
To my dad's house.
Your dad Nicholas?
Yep.
All right. And when you went to your dad's house, did you still have your Apple Watch?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point, did your dad take the watch? Okay, is that a yes?
Yeah.
Sorry, we have to say yeses or nos in this courtroom just because we have to be formal. So, yes, we all understand what yeah means, but just if you could try to say yes, that would be great, okay? Or no, either way. Okay. And then that was the last time you saw your mom? Okay, if I could just have one moment. That's all I have for you. Thank you so much.
To watch.
My dad.
Why?
Because someone called on it.
Okay, so did he take that call?
No, he tried to get in contact with the place who called him.
Do you know who it was?
No.
Did you see that call had come through? Did you see your watch with that record of that call, or was this all from what your dad told you?
This is what
Okay. That's all I have for you, Devin. So Mr. Hunting here is going to ask you some questions, okay?
Good morning, Devin. How are you?
Good.
My name is Mark Hunting. I just have a couple of questions for you. Do you know why your dad took your Apple Watch?
Because someone called on it.
Okay. So was it still on your wrist when that call came in? Had you taken it off and put it down somewhere?
I put it on my dad.
Okay. And when it rang, was your dad in the room with you?
No.
Did you then call out to your father and say, hey, I'm getting a phone call?
I did notice I got called.
You didn't notice that you got called? Okay. So the phone call, when it came in, you didn't know that it came in?
No.
And it was only later that you looked at your phone and you saw that you got a call on it?
No, my dad looked at my watch, I think, to charge it, and he saw that someone called me.
Okay. But you didn't know that until your dad told you that. All right, fair enough. Do you happen to know, Devin, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, what your first day of school was in 2022? So this school year, do you know what day your first?
Wednesday.
It was a Wednesday. Do you know the date? Okay. What school do you go to?
I don't remember.
You don't remember what school you go to?
Went to.
Y- Okay, so you no longer go to that school? And you don't recall the name of that school? What grade are you in?
Fifth.
5th grade?
Or, I'm in sixth grade now, but I was in fifth.
Okay, so we're talking about August of 2022. Okay, so about 6 or so months ago. In August of 2022, what grade were you going into? 5th grade. But you're now in 6th grade? So you graduated from 5th grade to 6th grade middle of the year? Okay. And so the school that you're in now, you moved, when you got there, you moved into 6th grade?
No, I was going into 6th grade. It was, I think it was over summer break that I moved to, my next school.
Okay. Let me see if I can get a little bit more information. You said that the first day of school, Lee drove you to school, right?
If I may, maybe clarify this, it wasn't his first day, it was his first day at a new school, it wasn't the first day of the school year. So it
Okay.
wasn't like the first day of the grade, the year for that grade, it was his first day at this new school.
Okay,
So,
that is helpful.
yes,
Okay, thank you. Let me take a couple steps back then. So Devin, it wasn't the first day of school that Lee brought you to school, is that right?
It was the first day of our new school.
Okay. But you had gone to another school for a couple of days before that? Yes? So the new school that he brought you to, is that the same school that you're in right now?
No.
Okay. What's the school that you go to now?
Mount Pleasant Middle School.
Okay. And that's obviously not here in Grand Rapids. Is that up in Mount Pleasant? Okay. But the school that Lee brought you to, was that here in the Grand Rapids area?
I think so.
You think so? How long were you at that school? Meaning, how long before you moved from that school here in the Grand Rapids area to the school in Mount Pleasant?
I don't remember.
Okay. But you think it was a Wednesday that he dropped you off at school on the day?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you think it's a Wednesday? Why do you remember that?
It was, on Wednesdays at that school, we had an hour longer than we had to go. So
Okay.
we were an hour early.
Okay. So you got to school an hour early
Yeah,
than you normally would have otherwise?
yeah.
That school that you don't go to any longer, how long did you go there?
I remember.
Was it a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
I don't remember.
Okay. But you remember at least on Wednesdays you had an extra hour of class.
An extra hour before I went to school.
I guess I don't understand what that means then. I assumed an extra hour means an extra hour of class.
So, on all the other days except for Wednesday, we go at a normal time, but on Wednesday, we could come to school an hour, later than usual.
Okay. So you actually came to school an hour later on that Wednesday as opposed?
We were early an hour.
Oh, okay. But you didn't know that because it was your first time going to that school, is that right? I gotcha. Okay. Do you think you went there then at least a week? Because you seem to know what happened on the other days of the week.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Now, you said you texted with Lee a few times. You remember saying that?
Yes.
Was that all through your Apple Watch? Did you have a phone of your own?
No.
Okay, so when you would communicate, it was typically through the Apple Watch? Okay. The text that you had with Lee, would this have been about that same time period?
A little bit later.
A little bit later. So, meaning after he had dropped you off at school?
No, like later in the year.
Later into the year.
Yeah. Like,
Okay. So, if your first day at the first day at this new school, where he drops you off, is sometime in August of last year, would you think that's about right?
yeah.
Okay. When did you start texting with Lee?
I remember.
How far after your first day at this new school, if you can remember?
I just remember getting his number.
You just remember getting his number, but you also texted with him?
I texted him a few times. I don't remember if he responded.
Okay, so there might be texts on your Apple phone where you're texting him, right? But you don't know or you don't remember whether or not you got any text back. Okay. to the best of your recollection or memory, what text did you send to him?
I think it was probably just something like hi.
Okay. Do you remember how many texts you sent to him? Aside from the day that Lee dropped you off at the new school, did you ever have any face-to-face, in-person contact with him other than that day?
I don't think so.
Okay. So that's the only time that you were physically in like the same room with him. Is that fair?
I think so.
Okay. Aside from those texts and whatever may have been discussed when you guys are driving to school, had you ever had any other conversations with Lee?
No, I don't think so.
Did you ever see Lee at the townhouse that you and your mom were staying at?
Yeah, one time, I think he picked a mom up.
Was this the same day that you guys went to school, or was it a different day?
It was a different day.
Okay. Did you go with them wherever they went to? All right. Was this before or after? Wait a sec, let me finish, okay? Was this before or after the day that he dropped you at school? Okay. So the first time you would have physically seen him was the day that he dropped you at school? And then you think there was another day that he came by to pick up your mom and you saw him then? Okay. Did you have any conversation with him then? Okay. Do you have any idea how many days after that first day of school that would have been? Okay. One moment, Your Honor. Devin, do you recall, this is not the first time that you've talked to people about this stuff, remember? There was a period of time when you sat down with some adults and they asked you questions. Do you remember doing that? And did you understand at that time that what you were saying to them was being recorded? So they told you, hey, we're making a recording of this? Okay. And if I told you that based on information that I have, that conversation happened on August 30th of last year, would you have any reason to say that's not true?
I don't remember.
Okay. That's fair. I get it. Would you agree with me, Devin, that whatever's on that recording is what you told those people back then?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever listened to that recording? Okay. One moment, Your Honor. We have no further questions for Devin.
Anything from the prosecution?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Done a wonderful job.
Go this way. At this time, the people call Nicholas Doolittle.
Go ahead and have a seat. All right. Could you just tell me your name?
Nicholas Doolittle,
Can you spell it for me?
Nicholasdoolittle.
Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you. Good,
Swear on that.
huh?
Let me swear on
Oh, okay.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, so help you God?
Good morning. And are you Devin's father? All right, Devin Doolittle.
Yes,
Do you know his date of birth?
I got 4 of them.
I hope he was right. And you currently live in what city? Okay. And did you have joint custody of Devin with Devin's mom?
Yes.
And who is Devin's mom?
Mollie Schmidt.
Okay. Currently known as Mollie Schmidt?
Yes.
All right. And can you tell us a little bit about the custody arrangement that you and Mollie shared with Devin back in this past summer?
It was pretty much every other weekend, unless she wanted to go on vacation or something, then she would call me and ask me about taking an extra, but it was every other weekend, most of the part.
Okay. So the Monday through Friday then would always be with you?
He would be with her.
He would be with her. So you would see Devin every other weekend?
Every other weekend.
Okay. And did you ever take Devin to this townhouse in Plainfield Township to drop him off? No? So how would Devin get between the residences?
We would meet halfway over by Ionia. Either we would meet or I'd meet her father to transfer it back and forth. So,
Her father being Michael O'Mara?
yep.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
So everything that's being said is will be typed up into a record. So we need responses to be yes or no, not yeah or I mean, we all do it, but just if you could try to remember to say yes or no, that would be great, okay? Now, to your knowledge, did Devin have an Apple Watch back in last summer or this past summer?
Yes.
And would you ever communicate with him over that Apple Watch?
We would try, but a lot of times it wouldn't go through to my phone for some reason. I'm not sure if it was just my phone or other people's phones, but it was definitely difficult.
So hit or miss?
Yes.
And calling your attention specifically to the weekend of August 20th, going into August 21st of 2022, so this past August. Where was Devin that weekend?
He was at his mom's house.
All right. And did you hear, when he's with his mom, does he sometimes text you during the day, or do you not really hear from him when he's with his mom?
I don't really hear from him when he's with his mom, like once in a blue moon, so
Okay. Do you recall if you'd heard from him on August 20th?
I did.
Okay. And
Sorry, what was the response there?
I didn't.
did not.
You don't remember, or you didn't have it?
He didn't get a hold of me.
Okay.
What was the first, how were you first made aware of the incident that was occurring on that weekend, August 20th?
Mike O'Mara got a hold of me Monday morning, the following Monday, and told me that Mollie had missed her visitation, and she wasn't home when he went over there to check on her, and Devin was there, so he was bringing him back up to Mount Pleasant to bring him to me.
Okay. And that was on Monday morning,
That was Monday morning.
which would be August 22nd of 2022?
Yes.
And so Devin then came to stay with you?
Yes.
And did Devin have his Apple Watch?
He did, yes.
At some point in time, did you take that Apple Watch from Devin?
I did. I took it as soon as we got home, because his grandpa brought him to my workplace. And when we got home, I took it just in case his mom would call. I didn't want him to miss a phone call because he was playing video games or something.
Okay. And where did you put it?
I kept it with me.
So on your person, like in a pocket or something?
I actually wore it.
Oh, you wore it, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I was there in case a phone call came in, so.
All right. And at some point, though, did you take it off?
Yes, I took it off Tuesday and put it on the dining room table.
Okay. And Tuesday, do you recall like what time of day that was, or what general time of day, afternoon, evening?
I think it was on my lunch when I came home, which would have been around 12 o'clock.
12 noon?
Yes.
And when did you next look at the watch?
The following day on Wednesday, after work, I came home and remembered that I didn't have the watch on, so I went and looked at it, and there was a missed call on there.
All right. And the missed call, did it say from when that call came in?
It did, but I don't remember what time they said the call came in. I just know it was Tuesday afternoon sometime.
Okay. And that would have been August 23rd?
Yes.
And you would have seen it the next day, which would have been August 24th?
Yep.
All right. Now, when you saw that, did you say you had come home from work when you saw that? What did you do? Sorry. See, I missed that one. When you saw that number, what exactly did it look like on the watch?
It was a weird number, but I called it back, so.
Did you recognize the area code?
No,
Okay, so it wasn't a 616?
no.
Okay.
Nothing from Michigan.
So you called that number on your phone?
Yes.
Your cell phone? Is that a yes? Sorry, see,
I
you
said
just didn't.
yes first.
Yes, you did. And when you called that number, what happened?
A lady picked up and I asked her, you know, who is this and stuff like that, and she proceeded to tell me that it was a hotel in Texas. And then I proceeded to tell her about our situation, what was going on.
What exactly, when you say the situation, what was your understanding of the situation at that time?
She was just missing.
Molly?
Yeah, Molly was just missing, she hadn't came home. She left her son at home, and that we were looking for Molly, and so I gave her a description of Molly, and she said that she hadn't seen anybody.
What was the description that you gave?
Short, skinny, blonde girl, that was about it.
Okay.
Not much further than that.
And I interrupted you. So you were saying that you gave that description and the clerk responded what? In what way?
She said that.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
I'm not offering it for the truth of the matter asserted. I'm offering it just to show why he said what he said next, for context of the conversation.
Go ahead.
Okay. I proceeded to tell her about what was going on with my son's mom not coming home, and she asked me where we were from, and I said Michigan, and as soon as I said that, she said that they were an hour and a half away from the Mexican border, and they'd be more than willing to cooperate with any detectives or anything after that point.
Okay. And then was that the end of that conversation?
Yes.
What did you do with that information once you got off the phone?
As soon as I got off the phone, I called Mollie's dad, Michael Mara, and I gave him the number and all the information that I got from that, so he could do whatever he needed to with it.
Okay. And was Michael, were you in contact with police at this point?
No.
Okay. When was the first time you actually talked to a police officer about the situation?
The first time I talked to a police officer was the following Tuesday, when they had found the body. They called us down to Grand Rapids.
Okay. So Michael kind of was doing the talk, go between you, law enforcement. Okay. Did you ever talk to anybody at that hotel again?
No.
Okay. And then what did you do with the watch after all that happened with the watch?
I kept it on me until when we went down the following Tuesday to talk to the detectives. Then they asked if they could have it for evidence, so we gave it to them.
Okay. In between the time that the watch received that call from Texas and to when you turned it into police, were there any other calls or contacts that you recall on that watch?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not that I can recall.
Did you keep it charged?
Yes.
At some point in time, did Michael O'Meara mention a name of a man to you?
Yes, a couple days after I gave him that information, he called me back and said that this guy named Lee was down there, and they had found pictures on his social media of Molly and together.
Did you ever say the name either to or around Devin?
Yes.
And did Devin respond in the affirmative that he recognized that name?
Yes.
Okay. Did you then also let Michael know about that?
Yes.
And the police later?
Yes.
Okay. But you never heard about Lee from anyone other than Devin?
No.
Okay. If I could have one moment. When you said Devin was dropped off to you at work, and then you brought him home with you that day, Was Devin concerned about his mom?
Yes, obviously he was concerned, but, he wasn't really worried anything had happened to her, so, he really didn't, talk much about it. We just went home and, we just did what he normally did and came over and jump on some video games and stuff, so.
Okay. And were you concerned, or when were you first concerned about Mollie's safety?
I was more angry than concerned at that point, that she had left him, because, we just thought she had left, or didn't come home from work or something. So we were just kind of waiting around to get a phone call.
Okay. That's all I have for this witness at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Doolittle. My name is Mark Hunting. I represent Mr. Garcia. I have a couple questions for you. Do you have a formal custody agreement with respect to Devin and who he lives with?
Yes and no.
Explain that to me if you would.
We didn't really have a particular visitation set up, but we had child support set up, so it
Okay.
was halfway done type of deal, I think.
Okay. Through what court, if you know?
Montcalm County.
So Montcalm County? All right, the circuit court there in Montcalm County. So this arrangement where every other weekend you would get Devin, that was just something that you and Mollie had agreed to?
Yeah, we just kind of went with that as maybe just implied that I get him every other weekend type of deal.
Okay. But a court hadn't ordered that?
I don't think so.
All right, fair enough. Do you happen to know what phone number would be attributed to Devin's Apple phone?
I wouldn't know it right off the bat.
Okay. Do you have that stored in your own phone?
I do, yes.
Do you have your phone on you?
I don't.
You don't. Would it be a 616 number, as far as you know?
I assume so.
Right? Had you ever, I think you mentioned that you had attempted to contact him before on that phone, and sometimes it didn't work.
Right, yeah.
Was there ever an occasion when it did work?
Just for the record, you keep saying phone. You mean watch.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
yes,
I just wanna
watch.
make sure-
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis.
Yes, there was a couple times where it did.
Okay. Now, at the end of your discussion with Ms. Curtis, she was asking you questions about, I think, Devin's sort of mindset about being left home alone by Mollie. Do you recall that?
Yes.
To your knowledge, had that happened before?
I found out afterwards that it had, but not at that time. I didn't know that.
You didn't know at the time, but you found out afterwards. Who told you that?
Definitely.
And did Devin indicate to you how many times or how often that would happen?
No, not at all.
But at least one time prior.
Yes.
Did he give you any indication on how long he would have been alone when that prior instance took place? Or if I have the chronology, the timeline correct, on Monday, August 22nd of last year is when you first learn that Devin had been left alone and he gets brought to you by Mike O'Meara. Is that right?
Yes.
And then on Tuesday, August 23rd, this call comes in from a Texas number, although you don't see it at that time, correct?
Correct.
And it's not until the next day, Wednesday, which would be August 24th of 2022, that you notice that there was a call from a Texas number. Is that right?
Yes, that's all.
And your words, it's a weird number, so you call it back
Yes.
and learn that it's a Texas hotel, right?
Yes.
All right. Why do you give that information to Mike O'Meara instead of the police?
Because, honestly, it really wasn't any of my business. It had to do with Mike and his family, and, like I said, at that point, we just
Do you know whether Mike was a police officer himself?
No, he's not a police officer.
Did he work in any sort of law enforcement field?
He was a corrections officer before he retired.
Yeah. So he's a retired corrections officer?
Yes.
Right. Do you know which prison he worked at?
Carson City Prison.
Okay. Now, I asked Devin these questions. I'll ask you. Do you recall, let me take a step back. You actually went and eventually talked to police officers, correct?
Yes.
You and Devin, correct?
Yes.
And you both gave interviews, is that right?
Yes.
Those interviews are recorded to your knowledge, right?
Yes.
They told you that they would be recorded.
Yes.
If I was to tell you that those took place on August 30th of last year, would you have any reason not to believe that?
No.
And is it fair to say that whatever you told the police officers in those recorded interviews, that was closer in time to when all this stuff was happening, is that right?
Re-ask that question,
Sure.
please.
August 22nd,
Okay.
you get Devin dropped off because Mollie's not home. August 30th, you have a interview, you and Devin both have interviews with the police officers. So is it fair to say that whatever you told the police officers in those interviews was closer in time to when all this stuff was going on than today, January 4th, 2023?
I still don't understand the question of that. Or
Okay.
what's the question?
It's not, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm just trying to lay something out, okay? August 22nd, Devin gets dropped off at your house.
Yes.
August 30th, you have an interview, Devin has an interview with the police officers, correct?
Yes.
That's 8 days apart. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
Therefore, an 8-day gap is much shorter than between August 22nd and January 4th of 2023. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that your memory and whatever you might have told the police officers back on August 30th is more accurate than your memory today?
No.
Okay. Nonetheless, that's recorded, the conversation that you had with the police. You understand that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. One moment, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, Your Honor, thank you very much.
Any objection to this witness being excused?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
At this time, the people call Michael O'Meara.
Mr. O'Meara, can you state your name?
Michael O'Meara,
Can you spell it for us?
O-M-E-A-R-A,
And Michael's the first spelling?
M-I-C-H-A-E-L,
I have.
Childs.
I said Michael's my middle name.
Oh, okay, oh, I thought you had.
All right. Let me do this with you. I'm going to swear you in, so you're going to ask some questions for you. Can you raise your right hand? You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Curtis is going to go first.
Good morning. Thank you for being here today. Are you the father of Mollie Schmidt
Yes.
and the grandfather of Devin Doolittle?
Yes.
Okay. Now, calling your attention back to August 20th of this past year, which was a Saturday, had you had any communication with Mollie that night?
Yes, I did.
I'm sorry, what date were you talking?
August 20th. Can you tell the court about that?
All it was is that I was gonna come down Sunday morning and go with her to get the girls and just planned on meeting with her and told her I love you and love you too, and that was the end of the text.
So these were text messages between you and Molly?
They were just texts,
Over cell phones?
yes.
Okay. And you mentioned the girls. Can you tell the court a little bit about who the girls are?
Ashley and Lily, my grandkids,
So Molly's daughters.
Mollie's daughters.
And can you tell the court a little bit about the situation where you would have to pick up Molly, like what the plan was the next morning?
Just they're supervised visitations, and we either go to sometimes Chuck E. Cheese, times just back to her apartment.
Okay.
You know.
I'm sorry, who's ordered supervised visitation?
Pardon?
Who ordered supervised visitation?
I don't know very much about that.
Who had supervised visitation?
Oh, the girl's dad, Dan
Oh,
Schmidt, has custody.
well, he has custody and Molly has supervised custody of the girls.
She supervised visitations.
That's when she was with the girls, she had to have you or somebody else facility. Okay, thank you.
So the plan for that Sunday, which would have been August 21st, was what?
Just, I was gonna be there about noon, we picked the girls up, about 12:30. And then at that point, I guess we were just gonna go back to the apartment for the day. A lot of times that's all we did, and then we'd have to have them back to meet Dan at 5:30, I think.
Okay. How often were these visits?
She had the visitations on Sunday, 12:30 to 5:30, I believe, and then there's a couple during the week that were only a couple hours, and I did not go to those.
And how old are the girls?
3 and 5.
Okay. And so had you been to this townhouse where Molly lived before, August 20th?
Yeah.
21st? Okay. And what about Devin? How often was Devin with Molly?
He lived with her.
So you mentioned that you and Molly texted the night of August 20th. Do you recall what time it was?
10:30 maybe, last time I heard from her.
PM?
PM, yes.
Okay. When was the next time that you, so then did you ever hear from her after that? Was that unusual?
I would always text her when I was leaving my house, telling her I'm on my way. She'd say, okay, or love you, whatever.
Did you do that on this Sunday?
I probably,
Okay.
it was common.
All right. Do you recall if she responded or not?
In the morning?
Yes. Okay. Did you find that unusual at that time?
It was kinda different, but yeah,
Okay. Did you proceed to the townhouse?
yes.
And what did you find when you arrived there?
She was not there, Devin was,
Okay. Did you have to knock on the door so Devin could let you in?
yes.
And did Devin tell you, what was Devin's demeanor at that time?
He just kinda like he woke up or been watching movies, whatever, and he just said, yeah, mom's not here, and I thought, well, maybe she ran to the store and she'd be back in a few minutes. She did not miss visitations that I know with the girls.
Okay. So you were concerned at that point?
It started to be, when it was time to head downtown to pick them up, it was starting to get late to do that on time.
And I think you mentioned 12:30 was around the time.
12:30 is when we would meet,
Do you know what time it was that you arrived at her townhouse?
probably around noon, quarter to.
All right. While you were there with Devin, what did you two do?
Just kinda sat, watched TV and waited, expected Molly was gonna show up at any time.
Did you try to call her?
Yeah, I tried to contact her,
And what would happen when you tried to contact her?
nothing, no response.
Okay. What happened next?
It got to the point where I just thought maybe she'd fallen asleep somewhere, gone somewhere, fell asleep, and like I said, she didn't miss her visitations. So, and I don't recall what time, 2:30, 3 o'clock, whenever, that I called the police, I knew something was wrong. got to be where it didn't make sense.
Right. So you called the police. Did an officer come out to the townhouse? So what happened? You just talked on the phone?
I just talked to him, and I told him, just like I basically said, she doesn't miss her visitations, and it just seemed very strange.
Okay. And what kind of information did you give the police at that time? Anything other than what you just said?
That's what I recall.
Okay.
There wasn't a whole lot.
Okay. Did it ever come up about whether or not she could have been at work?
Not that time of day.
So what do you mean by that?
From noon, whatever. She, like I said, she'd been there for visitations, or she would have told me.
Okay. Did you give the police any information about what kind of car she would drive normally?
I don't know if that came up or not.
Okay. But what kind of car did she drive at that time that you knew of?
Suburban,
A black
big
Suburban?
black Suburban.
Did you continue to try to contact her throughout the day?
Yeah,
Okay.
for days.
For days, okay. So what did you do with Devin, I guess? Did you stay at Mollie's townhouse for a while that day, or?
We stayed there for a while, again, 4:30 maybe, and I said, I don't know what's going on, I wasn't gonna just leave you. So, I took him home with me, he stayed with me that night, and then, I talked to Devin's dad. And I may have talked to Devin's dad that night, I probably did talk to Nick that night, and then Nick picked him up. Or I took him up to Nick the next day.
Monday.
Yes.
And at that point, Devin stayed with Nick.
After that, yes.
Okay. When did you next talk to the police again? Well, did you hear from, let me strike that. Did you ever hear back from Nick about Devin's Apple Watch? Something happening on the watch?
That was on Wednesday.
Okay.
Apparently the call came in on Tuesday. Nick didn't hear it then. And he saw it Wednesday and he contacted me. Cause he said it's a weird number, and by then Mollie'd been missing for a couple days.
Did he give you the number?
Yes,
What did you do once Nick had given you this information?
I called the number,
When you called the number, what happened?
the motel down in Texas.
Okay. Did you have a discussion with the person who answered?
A little bit. I don't recall all of it, but
Did you then give the information about the hotel to the police?
yes.
Okay. What happened next?
I don't know. Put it under investigation. I continued to try and talk to him, find out what I could.
To who? The police?
Yes.
Did you ever do any social media searches,
No.
like Instagram or anything like that?
No.
Were other members of your family assisting you in this situation?
Yes.
Okay. Anything that you learned, would you have given that to the police?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Did you eventually talk to a lieutenant at the sheriff's department about Mollie?
Yeah. I don't recall. I talked to
Yeah.
numerous people
Okay.
between Kent County and then into Wyoming.
Okay. Did you ever send any photos to the clerks at the hotel in Texas?
I did not know.
Did someone else in your family do that, maybe?
Possibly.
Okay. Okay. Did you ever get any information from the clerk, like specifically as to who was staying at the hotel in Texas?
They said that they had an ID of somebody. They never saw Mollie.
Okay, so this was through your information through the clerk at the hotel?
Yes.
Okay. Now, well, what did they tell you?
Just basically that, I'm trying to think. That he'd come down and they were kind of suspicious of him, but they, like you said, nobody ever saw Mollie. They never had her on camera, nothing.
Okay. And did they give you a name of a person who had stayed at the hotel?
Yes.
Okay, so a clerk gave you that name?
I don't recall if they did directly or not.
Okay. All right. Had you ever met Yenli Garcia?
No.
Okay. If I could just have a minute. You mentioned an ID that they had said they had of a person. Was it a Michigan ID?
Yes.
Okay. And you asked specifically if they had seen your daughter at this hotel?
Yes.
Did you describe her for the clerk, what she would look like, what Molly looks like?
I asked if anybody, if they had seen her. I guess I didn't describe her.
Okay.
There's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
Just,
So the last time you had contact with Molly would have been Saturday night, August 20th, 2022?
yes.
That's all I have. Thank you very much. Oh, he's
no.
gonna ask you some questions.
Oh, sorry, Mr. O'Meara.
No problem.
Good morning, Mr. O'Meara. My name's Mark Hunting. I represent Mr. Garcia. First off, my condolences for your loss. I do have some questions, however, that I need to ask you. You had multiple contacts with various police officers as you were trying to find out what was going on with and/or where was Molly. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I think you mentioned that you spoke to some Kent County folks and also some Wyoming folks. Is that fair?
Yes.
Nicholas Doolittle testified right before you, and I actually asked him if he knew what you did for a living, and apparently you're a retired corrections officer. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, so you're generally familiar with speaking with police. I mean, is that a fair thing for me to say?
Other COs.
Okay, I mean, at least people in sort of the law enforcement arena.
I worked third shift. I saw very few police
Okay.
out of there. But
Okay. You understand, however, that police officers, when they speak to somebody, they create a report.
Yeah.
And that report is supposed to be as accurate as possible.
Yes.
I'm assuming as a CO, corrections officer, that there were incidents probably that happened within the prison that you had to document, so you would have to write reports on occasion. Is that fair?
Once in a while.
Okay. Yeah, I'm guessing you were instructed to try and make those reports as accurate as possible. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So you understand that the same sort of, I guess, instruction is probably given to police officers.
Yes.
All right. Do you happen to recall the names of any of the police officers that you spoke to? If you don't, that's fine. This is not a test. I'm just wondering.
Detective Weemhoff, there's a female detective out of Kent County, don't recall her name, I only talked to her once.
Okay. Do you remember speaking to a Jason Richards?
Yes.
Okay.
Speak with them.
Okay. You mentioned when you were speaking with Miss Curtis that you had been texting with Molly the night before her, I guess, supervised visitation the following Sunday, correct?
Yes.
Do you still have those texts?
It's, my phone crashed partway through this,
So no?
it would be on my old phone if I can get it to boot up. but
Okay. I know.
Nothing on this phone.
Because I know some people are what we kind of call deleters, meaning, okay, I got a text, I don't need to keep it, and they delete it. Other people tend to keep all their texts, and you can scroll back a long ways. So the phone you were actually using crashed, so you can't access that, but you think it might be on an older phone?
It would be, I believe it's on the older phone,
Okay.
yes. And when I put everything onto this phone, I don't know if other people have problems and not everything came.
You lost some information?
This phone, I don't have conversations before last January.
Okay. Technology's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you went down that Sunday and you found Devin alone, and it caused you concern, justifiably so, did you see if Molly's car was there?
Yes,
And-
it was always parked right in front of her
So-
apartment.
So Molly's vehicle was there when you got there?
No, it was not.
It was not, okay. So you checked and her car wasn't there? This is the black Suburban?
Yes.
Okay. When you attempted to call her that day. I think you mentioned that you tried to call her a couple of different times. Did it automatically go to voicemail, or did it ring, 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 and then go to voicemail?
I believe it rang and went to voicemail,
Okay.
because I tried both text and calling.
Okay. Do you know what kind of phone she had? Meaning what sort of model? Was it an Apple phone? Was it a Samsung? Was it a Galaxy?
Apple, I believe.
Apple? Did you also have an Apple?
Android.
Yours is an Android? All right.
I'm not big tech.
I'm not asking that you give me details, I'm just wondering if you know. And then you continued to make contact, or try and make contact with her over the course of the next few days, also by phone and text?
Yes.
And similarly, it was ring, 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 voicemail, as
There
opposed,
came a point that it went right to, or it wouldn't do anything.
not
I
even,
think if it even went to, I don't think it even went to voicemail after a while.
Okay.
It was shut off.
all right. Now, when you contacted the hotel, well, you call this number that's a Texas number, correct?
Yes,
Turns out that it's a hotel.
yes,
You learned that information from Nick, right?
yes,
All right, including the number.
yes.
Did Nick tell you that he had attempted to call this number and found out it was a hotel ahead of time, or did you not know that when you made the call?
He said it was a motel.
Okay. Now, when you called the hotel, do you remember whether you spoke to a man or a woman?
It was a female.
Okay. And do you know whether or not the hotel told you that she, Mollie, had checked in with another individual?
I don't recall.
Okay. I think Ms. Curtis asked you whether or not you yourself had shared any photographs of Mollie with the hotel, and you said you did not.
I did not.
Do you know whether anybody else did?
I do not know that either.
May I approach, Your Honor? Mr. O'Meara, I'm going to ask you to read to yourself 3 paragraphs here on this piece of paper. I've highlighted them myself. You can disregard the highlighting, but read those just to yourself if you would. You read it?
Yeah.
Mr. O'Meara, this is what we call a supplemental report that's authored by Officer Jason Richards, who you acknowledged that you had talked to while all this stuff was going on. And he creates the report based on the conversation that he has with you. After reading those paragraphs, does that refresh your recollection as to what you told at least Officer Richards?
The part on there is right after Nick gave me the phone number, I called.
You called Texas,
The number.
okay? And then eventually you relayed what you learned to Mr. Richards, Officer Richards, is that
Yes.
fair? Again, what Officer Richards has, I guess, recounted here in his report, to the best of your knowledge, is that accurate with what you two spoke about?
Appears to be, yes.
And if this indicates that you, with the assistance of family and friends, who were also trying to find Mollie, sent photos down to the hotel, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you did it,
Yes, it was not me.
but you were aware that somebody had done that.
I guess I don't recall that conversation, but.
Do you want to read it again? I'm happy to.
Well, no, I'm just saying I don't know if you understand how much I went through with this. There's a lot of stuff I don't recall.
Okay.
Because I was constantly on the phone with friends, family, the police. I'm wondering where my daughter is for 10 days.
And I certainly, let me put it to you this way, I can understand that, but I don't share the, I haven't gone through that like you have, so I don't know the feeling. So I want you to understand that I can understand that it's very traumatic and very emotional for you, but I've never felt that myself, so I don't understand that in that sense, to be fair. But as we talked about, in a situation like this, it's important for reports to document things as accurately as possible, precisely because you who are due, yeah, I'm just trying to get to the point to see whether or not he wants to read this again. Because,
If that's what the detective wrote, I would say that is accurate.
okay,
I see no reason that he would lie. I have no intention of lying
okay,
to you about anything.
understood. And I don't think that you are, sir. I'm just trying to make sure that you have the opportunity to see what it is that you had said and either confirm it or deny it. So you've had a chance to read these 3 paragraphs. To the best of your recollection, after reading it again, what you stated in here to this officer, would that be accurate?
I would assume it is, yes.
Okay, fair enough. Would you agree that any other statements you made to officers, assuming that they accurately recounted those conversations, you'd agree with whatever their reports indicate as well?
Yes, I would assume.
Do you know whether any conversation or interview you gave with the police was ever recorded?
I don't know that,
Nobody ever told you, hey, we're recording this?
not that I recall. No.
Are you familiar with body cams?
Yes.
Do you happen to recall whether any of the officers, as you were talking to them, had body cams on their person?
Maybe when the state police came and told me that they had found Mollie,
Okay.
they may have had him on.
But that wouldn't have been an interview situation, fair? I mean, they're not asking you questions at that
No.
point in time.
They
All right.
were mean.
Okay. I think you mentioned when Ms. Curtis was talking to you that you obtained some, maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was somebody amongst the family, you obtained maybe an ID or a driver's license of Mr. Garcia from them?
Yes.
Was that at your request? Did you obtain that or did somebody else?
I don't understand.
Okay. You're obviously doing what you can to find Mollie, but then there's others doing the same, right? Do you know who asked for the ID of the individual from Michigan that was staying at that hotel in Texas?
I do, yes.
You believe you know who asked for it?
I don't know if they asked for it or not, or if the motel just offered it.
Okay,
I don't know that.
okay. Do you recall asking for it yourself?
No.
Do you recall getting it emailed to you?
It was sent to me, yes.
Sent to an email for you?
Text,
Okay, it was texted to you.
yes.
So, again, not trying to get into the tech here, somebody would have taken a picture of the ID with their phone and texted it to your phone.
I believe it came from the motel to somebody to me,
Oh, okay. So it didn't get directly texted to you.
not from the motel.
All right. Do you happen to know who it got directly texted to?
I'm not sure. I believe it was my sister
Right?
that sent it.
Okay.
Like I said, there are different people I talked to.
Sure, sure. But it didn't come first to you, it went to somebody else who then forwarded it to you.
Yes.
All right. And then what did you do with it when you got it?
Looked at it.
Did you forward it to the police?
No.
Do you know whether your sister, if in fact she was the one who got it directly from the hotel or motel, do you know whether she shared it with the police?
I don't know that either.
Did you share, obviously you talked to the police multiple times. Did you email them anything?
No.
Did
I
you-
don't do much of that.
Did you text them anything?
Not that I recall. Most of them were phone calls.
Okay, so aside from phone calls, you didn't provide them anything other than what you had learned and you wanted to share it via a phone call. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, there's different ones of us involved looking.
But whatever you shared with the police was purely by telephone?
Yeah, I'd only met him a couple times,
Or face-to-face, I should say.
face to face.
Right, okay. But you don't recall ever texting them anything or emailing them anything?
Not that I recall.
Right.
And I'll bring my old phone up and see.
Okay. The girls that you were going to have supervised visitation with Mollie on that Sunday, the name of their father is
Dan,
Dan, and that's Dan Schmidt.
yes.
Now, at the time this was going on, were Dan and Mollie going through a divorce, or had a divorce been finalized?
I think it'd been finalized.
Okay. That divorce is in Kent County, correct? If you know?
I couldn't tell you, I don't.
Okay. Mollie was living in Kent County at the time, though, right? And how long had she been living in Kent County, the best of your memory?
I don't think it was a year.
Okay.
I don't believe she'd been there a year.
Right. Did you have any conversation with the police about Dan Schmidt?
Nothing that no, they may have asked me, you know, about a father or something, but no.
If they asked you to characterize the relationship between Mollie and Dan Schmidt, do you happen to know what your answer would have been?
We went through a divorce.
Was it an amicable divorce?
They had problems, I know that. Mollie didn't discuss a whole lot about it. I mean,
Do you recall, maybe I asked it, do you recall talking to the cops at all about Dan Schmidt?
I don't believe so, no.
May I approach again? Mr. O'Meara, I ask that you read again to yourself this paragraph right here, which would be, I guess, the third one down. You read it?
Yes.
Now, does that refresh your memory as to having a conversation with the police regarding Daniel Schmidt?
I guess if that's what he said, but no, I don't recall a big, long conversation. I know Mollie was going through the divorce, and there were a lot of issues. I know that.
Sir, to be candid, I didn't ask whether or not it was a big, long conversation. I asked whether or not it refreshes your recollection about talking to them about Dan Schmidt.
No,
It does not. After reading that, it does not refresh your recollection.
again, try and go through this. You let me know everything you could remember.
That's why I asked you, sir, to read it to see if it refreshes your memory. If it doesn't, that's fine, but it does not, is what your testimony is?
It does not. And I don't know if you consider one sentence a conversation, you know? I did not recall a 20-minute conversation about Dan with the police.
Fair enough. May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. O'Meara, I'm handing you another report, and I'd ask you to read this paragraph here, which is the third paragraph from the bottom of that report. Again to yourself.
Yes, I do recall that.
So you recall telling the police, as it pertains to Dan Schmidt, that Dan Schmidt hired a private investigator to put a tracker, a GPS tracker, on Mollie's vehicle as a result of their divorce.
Yes.
To the best of your memory, did I think it was a woman you spoke to at the motel in Texas, is that right?
Yes.
To the best of your memory, did she indicate to you that Mollie checked in with Mr. Garcia to that motel?
No.
She didn't say it, or you don't remember?
She didn't say.
Okay.
Mollie, like I said, nobody saw her.
Okay.
Nothing on camera.
One moment, Your Honor.
No, sir.
Where do you live?
That's,
Okay, so that's why the pickup spot was off in Ionia.
pardon?
That's why the pickup spot was off in Ionia.
No, I would come down here.
Okay.
I would come down here and just pick the girls up downtown.
Sure. Another question I have is, when you contacted the hotel, how they ever make the connection between Mollie and Mr. Garcia? I mean, who made that connection? Why would they make that connection?
I get, we had gotten, we had seen Instagrams of Mollie and him, and then the pictures. I'm not really clear how all of that.
I'm not either, that's why I asked.
Yeah,
How they figure that out?
yeah.
Maybe you don't know, somebody else does.
It's, you know, I send my memory of all of this.
Yeah,
to-
I understand that.
Your Honor, 1 second.
It's already done.
I'm sorry?
It's already done.
I know, I'm sorry. How about 1 minute?
Okay. We're gonna take a break after this witness.
I do have one question, and to be fair, Your Honor, it's partly in response to the questioning you just
Sure.
had with Mr. O'Meara. He asked about like an Instagram picture or something like that. You didn't seek that out, right? You're not
No.
technologically savvy enough to do that, right?
Correct.
But somebody within the family did that.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you know whether they found that picture because they searched for Mr. Garcia on Instagram or searched for Mollie on Instagram?
I'm not sure.
Okay. But it-
I don't even understand how Instagram really works.
Fair enough, I'm not sure many people do. But is it fair for me to, you saw the picture that they found, correct? That,
One or two.
all right. Was it them together, Mollie and Mr. Garcia together?
Yes, one of them.
Okay. And the other one was just a picture of Mr. Garcia?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Curtis,
I have no more questions.
any objection to this witness being excused?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Very good. Or you can- All right,
Thank you, Your
be
Honor.
back, thank you. We're gonna take a 15-minute break, we'll come back.
Your Honor, just briefly, I mean, we can go off the record, but what is the plan as far as scheduling? Do you plan on taking a lunch break at about noon?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got my daughter's in town, I gotta back up to the airport.
Okay. All right. Just for scheduling of witnesses and
Yeah, you
whatnot, I
bet.
just wanted to kind of get an idea timing-wise.
Do you know who your next witness is?
Yeah.
The Dr. Stark?
No, it's Brandon Mars, but I don't anticipate he's gonna be very long. Then we're gonna go to the two Zoom witnesses.
Okay. You think we'll get that done by then?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Probably, yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah.
Okay, good. We're moving right along.
Oh, you see? You're next, Brandon.
Oh, do you need a bar or something? I got one. I just grabbed food.